Hello, everyone. This is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and welcome to another edition of the Superman and Lois Season 3 review series. And today I'm going to be talking about episode 12, Injustice, which I have just finished watching. And this episode, for the most part, was actually very good. I really enjoyed this one a lot, and I thought the show did a great job in introducing the latest portrayal of Lex Luthor, who was played by Michael Dudlitz. And even though I would have much preferred to have had John Cryer reprise his role, I thought Michael Dudlitz, to his credit, did a very good job. He delivered a very chilling and solid performance, but at the same time, I didn't really felt that I fully clicked with his Lex Luthor. Obviously, this was only his first appearance, so it will take a bit of time to get used to him. But for me, at the end of the day, all due respect to Michael Dudlitz, and even John Cryer as well, Michael Rosenbaum is still the man. He is still the best Lex Luthor. But the way they portrayed and written Lex Luthor was very different to the John Cryer portrayal of Lex Luthor. Whereas John Cryer was a lot more campy and a lot more, how should I say, over the top, which was fine, perfect for Lex Luthor. I thought this portrayal of Lex Luthor was very quiet, very menacing, and he had a very intimidating presence. So he wasn't this silly guy going around telling people who cared enough to listen that he's Lex Luthor and he's the greatest criminal mind of all time. This Lex Luthor was more portrayed like a crime boss, similar to the Kingpin in the Marvel comics. Think of the Kingpin from the Netflix Daredevil shows, but a little bit different. Whereas Kingpin in Daredevil used more of his influence and his brute strength, Lex Luthor in Superman and Lois does use intimidation, but not through physicality, more through his mind and his words. So, for example, he could turn around and say to you, call this number now, which I'll talk about that in a moment, and he would be 10 steps ahead of you. So this Lex Luthor, although very different, still retained the intelligence of the iconic Superman villain that we all love to hate. So I thought Michael Dudlitz, to his credit, did a pretty good job. Bear in mind that he's got to follow John Cryer, and you've got to follow, the man that came before everyone else, Michael Rosenbaum. Now, we all know Michael Rosenbaum isn't the original Lex Luthor, but in terms of modern portrayals, Michael Rosenbaum has left such a huge mark that I don't think it can be matched. But Michael Dudlitz, I thought, did a pretty good job, in my opinion. So, as always, I am going to give a quick recap of what's happened so far, and then after that, we are going to get straight into talking about episode 12. So, as we saw previously in episode 11, we saw Pia faking her attacks to mask her location. We saw Kyle get upset with Chrissy for keeping the secret that Clark Kent is really Superman and lying about people with powers intervening. We also saw Natalie leave a device in Mateo's apartment to try and locate his location. And we also saw Pia beginning to lose control of her powers. And we also saw Superman come to Pia's aid, and he takes her up to the sky and tells her that it's okay to let go, as we see Pia dies in Superman's arms and delivers her last words to her family, Bruno and Mateo Mannheim. And we see Bruno is taken into custody at the DoD in exchange for all of the weapons that he had stolen, as long as the charges against his son were dropped. And we see Lois goes into surgery to have her operation, and we see Jordan suffers a panic attack and he develops X-ray vision, and we see Lois's surgery has gone well, and Kyle apologizes to Chrissy, and we saw at the end, we saw Bizarro Superman wake up and in constant pain. A very good and unique way to set up episode 12. So, with that all said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. Let's talk about episode 12, Injustice. So, This episode starts off with the aftermath of Lois's operation as she struggles to accept her new body and come to terms with regaining her confidence again. As we see, her day gets a lot worse as we see Lex Luthor has finally been released from prison after being locked up for 17 years for a crime that he didn't commit, thanks to Lois Lane's publishing of the article that Lex Luthor had committed murder. We also see in this episode Jordan not knowingly bringing unwanted attention to himself by the media after constantly making saves as he starts to become very careless and foolish. We see Jordan is doing nothing to dispel the rumors. He goes around telling everyone that whoever this person is, he's a hero and should be respected. Sarah is shocked and very disappointed at Jordan's behaviour and goes to tell her mum Lana all about it. Knowing how hard it is to keep such a huge secret in Smallville, Lana lets the Kents know what Jordan has been talking about, which results in Jordan being banned from using his powers and forced to hand over his suit. We also see in this episode Lex Luthor has finally been introduced, and as I mentioned already, he spent 17 years in prison for the murder of Boss Moxie. And throughout the episode, we delve into Lex Luthor's backstory as we see him in prison, and we see that this Lex Luthor, unlike previous versions, that this Lex Luthor is very despicable with psychopathic tendencies and manages to take over the entire prison, very similar to what the Kingpin did in the Netflix Daredevil shows. And we see Lex Luthor trying to buy the electric shaver from one of the prisoners, and we see the prisoner's name is Otis. For those of you who know Otis, Otis is, of course, Lex Luthor's dopey sidekick. But in this show, Otis is a big muscle man and a huge brute. So, very interesting take on Lex Luthor's iconic sidekick. And we see Lex Luthor is willing to throw money to have these electric shavers. We then see the prisoners remain adamant and begin to make fun of Lex Luthor. However, Lex Luthor still has connections outside and he manages to blackmail the prison warden by holding his whole family hostage, using his henchmen on the outside to abduct them. We then see Lex Luthor has all of the prisoners savagely beaten, and Lex Luthor declares that he rules the prison now by manipulating the warden. Lex Luthor can also be seen enjoying fancy dinners in prison while using Otis as a chair. My God. We then see Lex Luthor is finally freed from prison, and we see him walking out through the middle of the road as a tornado closes in on Smallville. As the tornado closes in on Smallville, we see Clark change into Superman and flies right into the heart of the storm in an attempt to use his freeze breath to freeze the tornado inside in the hopes that the storm will eventually stop. We then see Jordan joins him despite being told that he was forbidden from using his powers. Jordan starts using his freeze breath to help Superman out, and the storm soon vanishes and the tornado dissolves. Instead of flying from the scene, we see Jordan stands in the middle of the road in his costume and begins to take pictures with loads of people that he saved. We see Lois and Clark are beyond angry and watch as danger rises around their family. Sam Lane is doing what he can to dispel the rumours, but not even DOD can stand against the power of the internet. To make matters worse, Lois's friend at the Daily Planet publishes the article and it begins to get a lot of attention. We then see Lois and Clark argue with Jordan, and he explains that he is sick and tired of living how they tell him to. He wants to be recognised, but is not aware of the consequences of his behaviour. While leaving for his room, Jordan tries to use his powers against Clark, and Clark angrily warns him not to ever do that again. Wow. And he's not even on Red K yet. Imagine if he was. My goodness. We then see Lex Luthor approaches the Kent's house and confronts Lois and Clark and begins to make threats to them. Luthor blames Lois for everything that has happened to him, despite him being involved with numerous criminal activities in the past. Lois apologizes, but it's not enough for Lex. Lex Luthor screams at Lois and says, "You took 17 years away from my life. My daughter is 14 years old and she won't even talk to me anymore." Wow. Luthor doesn't want to read Lois's articles ever again. He threatens Lois to retire from the Smallville Gazette or else. He makes several thinly veiled threats, but Lois ultimately chooses not to retire and lets Clark know this. We then see Lex Luthor and Otis go underground where Bruno Mannheim's former laboratory was, and we see the Bizarro Superman has been living in darkness in the collapsed tunnels and eating rats like a cannibal. We see Bizarro looks terrible, dirty, and basically a dark, twisted version of the Man of Steel, as he's become more of a beast than Superman. As we see Bizarro tune out a dead rat, he is alerted to the presence of Lex Luthor and Otis and attempts to attack both of them. We see Otis has seemingly died, and we don't know what Lex Luthor's fate is yet. And that's how we end episode 12. Overall, I thought this was a very good episode. I looked at this episode as more of Lex Luthor's story, as we got to see what he had been going through from the time he was locked up in prison to what he had been up to in prison to when he was finally released. So I thought this was a very good episode, and as I said, I thought Michael Dudlitz did a good job. It's going to take a bit of time to get used to him, but he's off to a pretty solid start. So we'll just have to see what he's going to do next. And Jordan's behavior and not caring about the consequences of his action was very interesting. And it's cool to see how Superman deals with a rebellious teenage son. So I thought that side of things was very good. And in terms of Bizarro living like a cannibal, eating animals, very interesting take on Bizarro. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they've got planned for him next and what kind of allegiance him and Lex Luthor are going to have. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on episode 12? Did you enjoy it? What did you think of this portrayal of Lex Luthor? Do you think Michael Dudlitz did a good job? And what do you think him and Bizarro are going to do with each other? Are they going to work together? Do you think Lex Luthor could control Bizarro and use him to fight Superman? And also, how do you think Jordan is going about with his powers? Do you think he will eventually be outed out in public? And also, where do you think he will go from here? Is it possible he could become the next Superboy? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below. And I will see all of you next time for the final edition of the Superman and Lois Season 3 review series, where I am going to be talking about episode 13, which I am very much looking forward to seeing, especially with the way this entire episode played out and especially with the way it's ended. It's going to be epic and I can't wait. So until next time, take care everybody and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.